All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we know our preview and prediction for the Big 12 championship game between Kansas State and TCU. 2.5-point line in favor of the Frogs. 61 is the over-under. ABC at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Location of this one is Jerry's World in Arlington. And then the all-time series history, 8-8 with TCU claiming the regular season matchup 38-28 in Fort Worth earlier this year. Looking at this Kansas State offense, Nick, Adrian Martinez went down in that game. They were up 18 in against TCU. And then it all fell apart after that. The Frogs were able to come back and win that one. And this offense has certainly looked a lot different since then. As you know, Martinez battled some health. Will Howard's came in at quarterback, and this guy can really rip it. He's really starting to showcase his arm talent that he had not shown in the 2 years prior. 63% completion rate on the year for him. 245 yards per game, 13 touchdowns, only 2 picks. Will Howard, 6'5", 235 pounds. This is a guy that has an NFL type size. And his arm talent so far is reigning supreme. It wasn't all that great against Kansas, but this is a football team that's really just been kind of all about big plays, I would say, when it comes to passing the ball. And they do have 2 receivers that can certainly do that, Malik Knowles and Phillip Brooks. Cade Warner's gotten involved, 36 grabs, that is, for 5 touchdowns, which is a team high. Brooks with 35 for 495, and then Knowles 46 for 679. He's also one heck of a special teams player. Biggest thing that people are going to look towards, though, is Deuce Vaughn, 1,295 yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground. Adrian Martinez, him not being there, that's 615 yards and 10 touchdowns of production on the ground. You know, I obviously know he's been battling some injuries. He's day-to-day. And if Adrian Martinez is healthy in this game, I think you might see a nice 2-man rotation at quarterback. Vaughn's 348 and 3 touchdowns through the air. He's obviously going to get heavily involved in this one. There's times where Vaughn doesn't seem to get as many touches as you think he would. And DJ Giddens has been a respectable number 2 with 422 yards and 6 touchdowns. Cooper Beebe at tackle leading the way for this offense that produces 33 points per game. Kansas State, Nick, they have ideal balance. This passing attack at times it certainly wavers. But what are you expecting right now? Because Martinez and Howard, 2 guys that can produce a lot for you at quarterback. It's really up in the air, but I think we're going to see both of them play on Saturday.
I find it very interesting that Martinez and Howard are kind of 2 different quarterbacks. Martinez, more of your dual threat, kind of rush first kind of quarterback, while Will Howard is sort of your pure pocket passer. Incredible arm strength, great size, great vision on the field. Will Howard has fantastic size, 13 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. I like the strength there. I like the vision. Doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes. And having a guy like Howard at quarterback actually might help this team, considering they already have a solid rushing attack with Deuce Vaughn. I certainly agree that it is difficult to lose 615 yards on the ground and then 10 scores from Adrian Martinez. But you have a guy like Vaughn, who's such a dynamic back and has so much speed available. Almost 1,300 yards on the ground so far this season. 7 scores for him, 5.3 yards per carry. And I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to have Howard play most of the snaps on Saturday, considering Martinez's help. If they split snaps, it certainly is a possible recipe for success, considering how they both have different strengths and requires TCU defense, which has not been great this year, to kind of focus on different things, have to set out different packages depending on which quarterback's on the field. It could create some confusion depending on the substitutions. Malik Knowles, incredible special teams player, great player at wide receiver, leads the team with 46 receptions, 679 yards on the year, plus the 2 scores. Phillip Brooks having a decent season too, almost 500 yards receiving and the 4 scores for him. Cade Warner as well, not a bad season with the 5 touchdowns for him, nearly 400 yards receiving for him as well. Benson on at tight end is another good tight end with 367 yards receiving and the 3 scores. I like this offense a lot. There's a lot of balance here, a lot of speed top to bottom. Deuce Vaughn is certainly involved in the passing game as well. So it really depends what they want to do on Saturday with their quarterback options. How healthy is Martinez? Do they do 2 quarterback system? Do they split snaps? What's going to be the story on Saturday?
Now they only have 9 giveaways on the year. And again, like you said, the vertical running game is going to be terrific. But if Vaughn's the only one getting to go and Martinez isn't, then I wonder how much that will be affected. But this TCU defense, we'll talk about them in a minute. They give up a lot of space, so I certainly think it's going to be a big opportunity for Vaughn to shine. In this offense, they were clicking before Martinez went down in that one. Vaughn only ended up with 83 rushing yards on 12 attempts. Look at a TCU offense. It's been terrific, and a lot of people are like, they don't want to see TCU in the playoffs and whatnot, but I don't think people truly understand how good this unit is or respect what, is kind of going on in the building there in Fort Worth. They have Sonny Dykes, who's a phenomenal offensive coach, mixed in with Garrett Riley running this air raid, who's emerging through the coaching ranks. 41 points per game for this unit. You have a senior quarterback who's going to land on the Heisman podium, and Max Duggan, who's got 3,070 yards, 29 touchdowns, only 3 picks. He's also running for another 294 and 5 touchdowns. Max Duggan, a 4-year starter at the university here for the Frogs. They also have Keandre Miller, 1,260 yards, 16 touchdowns. 6.3 yards per carry. He has a touchdown in, I think, almost every single game this year. His yards after contact ability is just terrific. He's a slasher. He's a guy that can break tackles. This is a really good football player. They weren't all that great against Baylor running the football against a strong defensive line. He also didn't get as many touches. That's one thing that's certainly a problem for this football team at the time, is not giving Keandre Miller enough touches. You look at the West Virginia game, 120 yards and only 12 touches. Oklahoma only had 13 carries, went for 136. They blew him out in that game, so it really didn't matter. It's kind of been a theme this year, though, where he does not seem to get the touches he probably should be at. And then you also got Umari DeMarcado, who, he'll spell him sometimes as the number 2 back. He's got 445 on the year. I think more importantly, though, you continue to look at some more veterans. Quentin Johnson, this is a top 10 prospect in the upcoming draft, for his size, 6'4", 215, his ability after the catch, his physicality, reigns supreme on opponents, 49 grabs, 764 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 more seniors in Tay Barber and Darius Davis. And then Savion Williams has been really good, 28 receptions, 386 yards for him. This is an offense that really spreads it around, Nick. They got playmakers, they got veterans everywhere, especially on the offensive line, led by Steve Avila. This interior, they have terrific size, 6'5", 320. That's the, average of those guys in the middle. Alan Ali, he's another senior. And then Brandon Coleman, a junior at left tackle, is terrific. And then John Lance, a redshirt senior there at right guard. I mean, there's so much leadership, so much veteran presence on here, and they have 2 great coaches leading the way. This is a terrific offense and not getting enough respect one bit.
Duggan is an absolute star at quarterback for this TCU offense. Guy that got no love going into the season. 4-year starter. You expect a little bit more love for him. Having an incredible season, 3,000 yards passing for him, plus the 29 scores and the 3 interceptions, plus the 5 scores on the ground. Keandre Miller, incredible back, 16 scores for him, 1,260 yards for him, 6.3 yards per carry. It's weird they don't give him as many touches as you expect. He is below 200, just about 200 on the season. I'd like to see a little bit more action for him on Saturday. Wide receiving core, solid. Johnson, obviously a superstar athlete, big prospect in the draft, 764 yards received for him, plus the 5 scores. Barber, Davis, Williams, all these guys are solid, solid receiving core here. Gunnar Henderson, another guy. It's not getting a whole lot of touches, but he's a solid wide receiver. Jared Wiley at tight end, another good guy. This offense can spread it out, so many different options. High-flying offense. It's not shocking considering the minds that are running this offense. Garrett Riley, one of the best young play callers in college football. Sonny Dykes, of course, we've known him for years as an incredible offensive wizard. This is a fantastic team, top to bottom on offense. They put up a ton of points. They're going to score a ton of points on Saturday. They're going to. The key is to outpace Kansas State. This team scores 41.3 points per game. Super high-flying offense, and I expect them to continue to do that on Saturday.
Looking at the Kansas State defense, 19.4 points per game allowed. The run defense, I think, for the most part, 1,143 yards per contest, but they've been pretty strong. They did give up 269. They got torn apart against Bijan in that one. Season high, 56 attempts by TCU for 215 yards in the first meeting. So Kansas State, they seem to match up very well with that size on the interior of TCU. Guys like Eli Huggins, Felix Udoma, he's a phenomenal pass rusher coming off the edge, having a great year once again. 10 tackles for loss for him. He's also got 7.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. This is a guy that can force fumbles with ease. He has a very good first step for them. That's going to be something to watch coming off the edge. I like what, Huggins has done for them. Him coming back has been terrific. I think Austin Moore, he's been a pleasant surprise at linebacker for them. This is a run defense that has certainly had their struggles, but I do think they played pretty well against TCU to begin with, and they do have these playmakers and their own veterans in that front 7 that can certainly, it's really a front 6. They can do a lot of work. Khaled Duke coming back from injury, he's been big for them. I think the biggest thing about this football team that's kind of going unnoticed is the resurgence of the secondary. Last year they're giving up a lot of completions, down to 58.5% this season. They also have 15 interceptions compared to 15 touchdowns. They are really ball hawking. That's one thing they really do. Julius Brents, he's been terrific for them. They don't exactly have the empowering size on the outside. Iko Boy Dow, he's probably their best corner. He's not very big, 6 foot 171. That's certainly going to be a mismatch that they're going to look to take advantage of. Josh Hayes at senior, he's been a really good ball player. This is a Kansas State defense that I would say they don't give up a whole lot of space. I think they've been playing very well in coverage. Look at a guy like Sincere Mason, who's been really emerging for them at safety. Brent, again, this has been probably their best defender all year long at his cornerback position. Josh Hayes has provided some good plays for them. And again, the emergence of Austin Moore in the middle has been terrific for them. So this is a Kansas State defense that I think they played very well. They've certainly had their moments of weakness, but they forced 20-plus turnovers this year. And they've not allowed over 370 yards. And they've only did that once in the last 5 games ever since that TCU collapse where their offense was clicking. And then after that, it was kind of a downhill fall after that. I think over the last month, though, this defense has certainly impressed. And that includes a 48-0 shutout over Oklahoma State, only to lose the next week to Texas. So a bit of an inconsistent unit here for Chris Klieman. But I think overall, this is a defense that they matched up pretty well with TCU the first time. And I think they do it once again here.
Yeah, I agree. This defense is solid. I like Austin Moore as a leader here. 82 total tackles, 1.5 sacks, plus 2 forced fumbles. Josh Haynes, Kobe Savage, 2 guys, and Derek Cheatham as well. These guys, all 3 safeties here are fantastic. 61 tackles for Hayes, 58 for Savage, 56 for Cheatham. These guys are solid top to bottom. They can break up the pass. Hayes, 7 pass deflections so far this season. Savage got 3 interceptions. Brent's 3 pass breakups, 3 interceptions for him, plus the 40 tackles. Azuma obviously having a great year, getting after quarterback, 7.5 sacks, 39 total tackles for him. I look at another guy like Nick Allen, 32 total tackles this season for him. Brendan Mott, 6 sacks for him, 30 total tackles. Very well-rounded defense, can get after the quarterback, certainly can produce sacks. I know these 2 guys kind of lead the way, Mott and Uzuma, but Cully Drake also has 3 sacks. Moore obviously has the 1.5. Pickle has 1.5 as well. This is a solid defense. I love what they can do, and it's going to be a serious test to try to contain TCU this weekend. TCU obviously incredible offense. It's going to be difficult to kind of contain this offense, but if there's a team that has a chance to do it, I think it's Kansas State.
Now we're going to have a TCU defense that, people talk about the USC defense, another team that's in playoff consideration. TCU's defense, they don't seem to get really talked about one bit, and if they do, it's really negative. And I can totally understand that because they've given up a lot of space this year, especially on the ground. But the last few weeks, they've really bounced back. Outside of the Baylor game, which, was sandwiched in between a phenomenal effort against Texas and a very good game against Iowa State, that's one thing I certainly think they might struggle at is physicality. They allowed 500-plus yards to Baylor, 230 on the ground, 270 through the air. They allowed 390 in the first game. They were giving up 7.3 yards per play in that game. After Martinez went down, it was just, again, a lot of 3 and outs, not much opportunity to do anything, turning the ball over. This is a defense that I think has certainly had their struggles. They have some great individual playmakers, a lot of speed too, especially the linebacker and in the secondary. Mark Perry coming over from Colorado has been great. Jamal Hoyge, D. Winters, he's their leader in the middle with 57 tackles. He's also got 10.5 TFL and 6.5 sacks. Hodges, he was also a transfer from Navy. This is a really good defense. Travius Hodges Tomlinson, he is a corner that's been around a long time. The defensive line, they're not very deep in terms of production or depth, but they've certainly been pretty solid. Dylan Horton, who's the best defensive lineman a season ago, gave up. He only has 7.5 TFL this year. Demonic Williams, a freshman, is about 320 pounds. He's been getting involved. I think this is a TCU defense that's kind of all over the place. Josh Newton at corner, though, he's been great for them. Jonte McMillan, and then Millen Bradford. These guys are really good, I'd say. In terms of individual talent, Hodges Tomlinson, when he's been a pass rusher, he's been good for them. This is an interesting defense. Again, I think they have some great individual players, but they don't exactly have a great pass rush. Their inside penetration is not terrific, Nick, when it comes to slowing down the run. They only have 23 sacks on the year, and all of those come from their linebackers. They don't have much production at all. Horton with 4 sacks on the D-line. That's about it you're going to see from that unit. How do you feel about this unit coming into this game? Because they were giving up a lot of big plays in the first meeting at home before the injury. Some long drives as well. Kansas State up 28-10 at one point in that second quarter before things, obviously fell off a cliff. But the vertical running game, even if Will Howard gets to start over Martinez, I wonder what the game plan is going to be. I think Chris Klieman would certainly know that better than any of us. But I think this is going to be interesting, regardless of who gets the start at quarterback. I think they're going to be really on their heels on this one. But one thing, again, I want to note is they have a lot of speed at linebacker and in the secondary that might help cover up this explosive offense.
I certainly think TCU pieces on defense are solid, but as a sum, as a one whole, they really just struggle top to bottom. We look at 2 linebackers, Hodges and Hodge. These 2 guys are kind of leading the way. 76 tackles for Hodges, 65 for Hodge. Hodge has 4.5 sacks. D. Winters has the 6.5 sacks. But outside of those sack numbers, there's really not a whole lot of production anywhere. They struggle after the quarterback. They give the quarterback way too much time. I like the secondary at times. Josh Newton has 3 interceptions. Bud Clark has 4 interceptions. This is a defense that gets beat on occasion. They give a lot of points, which is certainly their Achilles heel so far this season. 24.5 points allowed per game, 238.7 yards allowed passing, which is certainly a bad number considering the matchup that could potentially happen with the quarterback playing for Kansas State this weekend. There's certainly a possibility that Will Howard kind of has his day and torches this secondary if he gets the chance to. It's going to be about, can this TCU offense outpace this Kansas State offense? Because this is about dead even for me. I'd give Kansas State a little bit of an edge. defense is just not as good as they should be. We kind of expect them not to be this, but they're really not living up to that. If people want to give USC's defense a lot of hate, I think this defense certainly deserves some attention as well from the national media because they're just not that great top to bottom.
TCU has snagged 14 interceptions. They're 8th in college football with a 53% opponent completion rating. Leads us to team comparisons. Quarterback, I'm going to give TCU the edge there. Max Duggan, regardless of who gets the edge for Kansas State, I think he's a much better quarterback than Martinez or Howard. Running back, I want to give the edge to Deuce Vaughn, but I think TCU has a better 1-2 punch in Miller and DeMarcado. Wide receiver, TCU easily has that. Offensive line, I'm giving them the edge there. Just the size and the physicality on the interior, I think is just absolutely tremendous. Kansas State, they're not far behind either. They have a great offensive line. Defensive line-wise, I'm going to give the edge to the Wildcats at linebacker. I think the speed for the Frogs is a little bit. I'm going to give them the edge of the secondary as well. They've been playing very good football. I think in the secondary it's a little bit more even, but top to bottom, I think these are two pretty even rosters, and I like these team comparisons. Do you have any disagreements?
Say Deuce Vaughn gets the edge for me at running back. Just I think his talent as a whole kind of pushes him over the edge. The secondary, I agree, it could be even for me. I think the secondary is even, but otherwise, you compare it, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
We're going to final thoughts on the prediction. Keys to the game, I think, for Kansas State, figuring out your identity on offense in this one with what's going to happen at quarterback. It's a big question mark. You really got to figure that out. You got to stick with it. Whoever has the hot hand, you got to go with it, regardless of whatever the game plan was coming into the week. Whatever's working, I think you got to stick with that. So that's going to be a big thing for them. I think being able to clog the interior run game as well, that's going to be major. In tackling, Miller, he shakes people like it's nothing. That's one thing you got to do is be great at tackling. And for TCU, I think don't let the moment be too big. Win and you're in right now. I think Sonny Dykes needs to kind of let this locker room tune that out. Now, with how they played against Iowa State, I think that's certainly not a factor, but you never know. The lights could be very big here in Jerry's world. And I think, just being able to contain that vertical running game against Deuce Vaughn is going to be the biggest thing for the defense. Toughest game of the weekend to predict, Nick. I'm going to go Kansas State. I picked them in the first one. They were up 18 in the second quarter. I think they're going to win this one again with some big plays, 42-40. I see you taking the Frogs, but again, I think this is an incredibly tough game to predict. And, if they lose, it's really going to shake up the playoff bunch. As an Alabama fan, you have the Frogs winning this one.
Certainly, it would certainly benefit me if TCU lost. It would get a chance to sneak into the playoff, depending on what happens in the USC game in the Pac-12. I think TCU just has too much speed on offense. I think the keys for the game for me is, stick with Howard for Kansas State, right? Get the hot hand running. He's been good this year. He's been accurate. Get him early on, throwing deep. Try to pick apart this TCU secondary. And TCU, stay grounded, stay in the moment, focus, and hit the ground running early. Good balance attack early on. Put a ton of points in the first quarter if possible, just like they did against Iowa State. They attacked Iowa State very early, picked apart that defense, and put up a ton of points on Saturday. That's what they got to do this weekend, right? Just stay grounded, stay in the moment. Don't think about the rankings. Don't think about the playoff. Don't think about anything. Just focus on the day, focus on your assignments, and score as many points as you can in the first half. Kind of pull away from this Kansas State team and force them to throw the ball.
I would personally love to see TCU in the playoff. I think this offense would certainly give some teams a challenge. A lot of people do not respect this team one bit, and that's definitely not the right way to go because they have certainly earned every bit of it. As always, Nick, I appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, I'd love to see TCU in the playoff as well. I think Sonny Dykes and Garrett Riley combination is one of the most fun combinations to watch in college football. I think this team deserves a shot at the playoffs, certainly. I'd like to see someone different in there, but of course, as an Alabama fan, if TCU loses, I'm not going to cry about it because it certainly gives the Crimson Tide a little bit of a chance to sneak in.
That's me for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.